Indeed, here on the aisle, second row.
That's very kind. George Freeman, UK Trade Envoy. Nice to have you as my boss, Foreign Secretary. Look, as former Minister of State for Science, I wanted just to highlight the global race, the intensity of the global race for science and technology.
George, may I ask you already if this is going to be a question?
It is.
Thank you.
Do you recognize that I think there's a growing sense that people in this country want us to be a force for good in a sort of Carneyite middle power role rather than a slavish ally to Donald Trump and possibly any new American president? Do you recognize that? And do you think it's a choice, or do you think we can have our cake and eat it?
So I think there's probably two things in there, because there's both the science and technology issue and also the issue about what role does the UK play in the world. Of course, we have immensely close and important security and intelligence relationship with the United States going back for many generations. That is hugely important to us and will continue to be so. We also have issues where we disagree. And we have disagreed clearly on Greenland, for example, earlier on in this year, where we made very clear our view about the sovereignty of Denmark and of Greenland. What we also did was we worked across NATO allies to build the Arctic Sentry, which we were advocating for, which was a way of drawing together a multilateral NATO approach to the security of the High North, rather than a fragmented, fractured approach, which is what seemed to be being proposed at that time. So I think that is a good example of us both maintaining a principal position was different from the US position, different from President Trump's position, but we also worked to use our relationships to build a shared and multilateral way forward. So that's why I think we can maintain. We did a similar thing. We obviously took a different view, very different view to the US at the start of the conflict with Iran, and we didn't provide support for the offensive operations against Iran. We did, however, provide defensive support when our Gulf partners were facing attacks and threats from Iran, and we are now working to seek to get the Strait of Hormuz opened. Final thing on the science and technology, massively important, and the UK has a distinctive role to play. Our universities, our science technology capability, immense, including on AI, where we are the third country in the world. That may be significantly behind the US and China, nevertheless, third country in terms of developing capabilities, and also the lead country on AI security. And that's where I think, and that links actually to what a lot of the work that Rishi Sunak did, but that this government has built on. We can play, I think, a really important convening role on how we build guardrails, how we build standards for the future around AI.
Thanks very much indeed. Woman here on the aisle.
Hi, thank you. I'm Rachel Eicher. I'm a researcher at the LSE and previously with USAID. And I was wondering if you could speak to the restructuring of staff at FCDO and Britain's diplomatic corps, given the complexity of the challenges you've outlined, and also the need for soft power that many people have also spoken about. Thank you.
Yeah. So the FCDO, the combined size of the FCDO had become, over a period, has expanded to the point at which I think it was more than 20% more staff than the two separate institutions of the Foreign Office and DFID put together. Obviously, all departments face fiscal pressures, and we have to make sure that we are using the money most effectively. And so some of the FCDO 2030 reforms, which started before I became Foreign Secretary, have been a response to that. And some of it has actually been about making sure we have the skills, the talent, and the support for the expertise that we need for the future, and making sure we can respond in a really agile way to really fast changing issues. I think soft power has always been a hugely important part of what the UK does. And when I asked the question of ambassadors around the world is, what does the country that you serve in, what do they think of the UK? And actually one of the things that came back most strongly continually was about the value of our universities. Another that came back around our respect for the rule of law. and some of those issues that become crucial part of our soft power. And of course, you know, football, our Premier League, is significant at the moment. We did have a discussion at NATO between me and the Norwegian Foreign Minister about the upcoming match and whether Marco Rubio was going to be going to watch it in his home state as well. And perhaps he needed to have a big, you know, conference or something that he could just invite all these foreign ministers to as well. Our soft power is always an important part of what we are and who we are in the UK, and will continue to do so.
Okay, thanks very much. Right here in the front.
Thank you. Marwan Yagi, the political counselor at the Embassy of the State of Palestine. First, I want to thank you for your leadership, especially in the last decision that have been taken by Your Excellency regarding the illegal settlements. But my question is more about Andy Burnham and the last statement that he have done, that he think that the UK government position was not like wrong when it comes to Gaza. However, what do you think Andy Burnham will bring in something new to the table when it comes to the foreign policy of the UK government in Palestine? Thank you.
So I think Andy's, again, has a strong sense of both the issues around security and values, which are some of the points that I was making earlier on. And so I think some of the things that he's talked about today is about recognizing how devastating it is, the humanitarian crisis that is happening now in Gaza, and also the escalating tensions around the West Bank. I think also, I know from conversations that I've had with him, he is interested in some of the points that I was talking about earlier, about areas that we're looking at to try and go further around the sanctions regime, and also looking at the issues around trade with illegal settlements. But look, ultimately, those are issues that, you know, Andy will need to set out himself, and want to say what he wants to take forward and so on. But I think and the other things I think he was also talking about was recognizing as well the deep trauma and distress that was caused on October the 7th, and the impact that that has had, as well as now seeking to find a way forward towards that two-state solution, and the need to be able to challenge and address what is happening now.
Thanks for that. We've got room for one or two more right over here on the wall by the window.
Mr. Hodier from Chatham House CFC. Foreign Secretary, thank you so much for the keynote. I was just wondering, in the absence of a public China audit, what is the roadmap, if any, that your government is laying down for the UK's potential engagement with China in the future? Thank you.
Thanks very much. And let me say the CFC, the Common Futures conversation, is a conversation brokered by Chatham House amongst selected young people from right round the world. Their questions tend to be extremely good.
So when we think about China, we know that that means security threats from things like cyber threats that we face.